Okay, today we're going to talk about one of the most, if not the most important thing that ever has happened in the world, or at least it has changed our lives the most, which is something called the Industrial Revolution. But in order to tell you the story of the Industrial Revolution, we are going to go back not 200 or 300 years, as the Industrial Revolution happened in the 1700s, but we are going to go back about 12,000 years to prehistoric times and talk about a caveman. A caveman named Gluck. Because if you can understand what it is that happened to Gluck 12,000 years ago, then you can understand the Industrial Revolution. So, here is the story of our humble caveman named Gluck. Gluck, being a caveman, lives in a cave. And like all the other cavemen, he lives in a place called Rabbit Valley. Rabbit Valley. In Rabbit Valley, there are millions of rabbits running around. And rabbits are what cavemen eat. The problem is they are really fast and really hard to catch. I don't know if you ever tried to outrun a rabbit, but they are fast. So what the cavemen do is they chuck rocks at them, and sometimes they hit them, and rarely they will kill one of them because the rabbits are just so fast and the rocks aren't the best instrument to use. And so about every other day, a caveman can kill a rabbit. So that's what Gluck does with his time. He has no time for anything else. He hunts rabbits all day, every day, and about every other day, he kills one. It takes him all day to hunt, but he does it. And luckily, one rabbit feeds 4 people for about 2 days, so he has just enough food to feed his wife and 2 kids by getting one rabbit every 2 days. Well, Gluck comes home one evening, rabbit in hand, and finds that his wife has a new bundle of joy in her arms, a new baby. And he is flabbergasted. What, he says, where'd this come from? He looks around the cave. Where baby come from? Well, he looks at the rabbit in his hand. He looks back at the wife and the kid. Starts doing the math on his fingers. Looks at the rabbit, looks at the baby, grabs the baby by the ankles, and bashes its head against the wall of the cave and chucks it outside. Because there's not enough food to feed more than 2 kids, him and his wife. And his wife is very upset with him and doesn't talk or grunt with him for days afterward. But that's the math when you don't have enough food. Well, then Gluck has a brilliant idea. He comes up with an idea to catch those stinking rabbits. So he takes a risk. He takes 3 days off of his hunting and begins to work on a project through some trial and error. He takes a stick, rips it from a tree, strips the branches off of it. He takes a piece of stone, he sharpens it down into a point. He tried a circle and he tried a square before, but he realizes a point works best. He ties it to the end of the stick, and he has made an invention over the course of 3 days that he calls a spear. It works great. It's long and straight, and so when he hunts rabbits and throws this thing, it goes in a straight line. And not only that, with the pointy rock at the end, when he hits a rabbit, it kills one every time. So he can now kill a rabbit every single day, on average, when he hunts with this new invention called a spear. So even taking 3 days off, he kills 4 rabbits that week, and with the remaining 4 days of the week. So he has more rabbits than he would have before. He has 4 rabbits for the week instead of the usual 3.5, which he would get out of 7 days. And from then on, every day he gets 1 rabbit for 1 day's work. He goes home to his wife. She has an extra kid. He lets it live because now they have plenty of food, and he's happy. Well, one day, Gluck's neighbor comes by, and his name is Gluk. And Gluk walks into Gluck's house, and he points at Gluck, and he says, "Spear!" And Gluck thinks about it, and he thinks, I could make him a spear, but it's going to take me about 2 days to make a new spear. He can do it faster now because he knows the process, but it's still going to take him 2 days. And he thinks, well, in 2 days, I usually get 2 rabbits out of my work. So if I'm going to do this work for him, then I'm going to need an incentive. I am going to need 3 rabbits if you want a spear. So he says, 3 rabbits. And Gluk says, okay. And he leaves. Comes back the next day, throws down 3 rabbits that he rustled up somewhere and says, spear. And Gluk says, okay. And Gluk goes to work and makes Gluk a spear. But now Gluk has earned 3 rabbits for just 2 days' work. That's 1.5 rabbits every day. The next day, another neighbor comes in, throws down 3 rabbits and says, spear. So Gluk does it again. And now he has 6 rabbits for 4 days' work. And now his neighbors are catching rabbits every day and having larger families. So not only is Gluk more happy with this situation, but his neighbors are more happy with this situation. Well, one day, 5 guys show up at his house. And you guessed it, they all want spears. So, Gluk has to make a new move. He realizes he can't get this done himself. There's just too much demand. So he gets a great idea. Gluk opens a shop. He sets up a shop for 5 other people to do the work for him. Some of the same guys that came earlier that he already gave spears to. And what he decides is he'll give them 2 rabbits for every spear they make. Now, he's charging 3 rabbits for every spear he sells. So he's going to keep 1 rabbit for himself, and every one of those guys gets 2 rabbits for the spears they make, and it's steady income. Every spear they make, without fail, no risk, they're going to get 2 rabbits, and he's going to get 1 rabbit for doing no work whatsoever. So at the end of 2 days, because it takes them 2 days to make a spear, he has 15 rabbits for the 5 spears that his employees have made. He pays each of the employees 2 rabbits, so he has 5 rabbits left over. That's 2.5 rabbits a day for doing absolutely nothing. Well, at this point, other guys start to catch on, and they open their own shops. And he notices that his customers are beginning to dwindle because they're going to the other shops and buying their spears. And he thinks, how can I solve this problem? How can I get people to buy the spears from my shop instead of their shop? Well, if you had to solve that problem, what might you do? One way to get people to shop at your shop is to have a lower price on spears than the other guys. And Gluk thinks he can make this happen because he noticed something about his employees. When he watched the guys making spears, he realized that all the guys working for him aren't exactly the same. Gluk, for example, was super fast at making stick handles, but he wasn't quite strong enough to break the rocks to make the spearheads, so it took him a very long time to make a spearhead, but a very short time to make a spear handle. Whereas Gluk was super strong and he could break rocks, but he has really thick fingers and he's not great at sharpening those rocks, so that takes him a long time. And so what Gluk decides to do is to make an assembly line where each person in his shop does a different job and does the same job over and over and over again, a job that they can do best. And of course, the more they do just one thing, the better they get at that one thing. So you can imagine somebody might be able to cut down 10 trees faster than somebody can make a whole spear, if they're quick at it. So he sets up his shop in this way. He first makes a job of someone to cut down the trees. Then he has a person set up to cut the sticks from the trees. He next needs somebody to strip the branches from those sticks. Then, for the heads of the spear, he needs somebody to move the big rocks from the quarry to the shop. Another guy will break those rocks into small pieces. Another guy will sharpen the rocks, and finally somebody will put those spears together. This way, the whole process goes faster. And he puts a different man on each job. For cutting down the trees, he chooses Gluk, who has a big swing. For cutting sticks, he chooses Gluk. Stripping the branches, he uses Gluk. To move the big rocks from the quarry, he uses a strong man named Gluk. For breaking the rocks into small pieces, he uses the big guy Gluk. To sharpen the rocks, he uses Glak. And to put them all together, he uses Brian. This works like gangbusters. They are making spears left and right at first. But one day he walks by and he sees Glak just sitting on a pile of stones, chewing some grass. And he says, "Hey, Glak, what are you sitting around for?" And Glak says, "There's nothing to do." "Well, what do you mean?" he says. And Glak says, "Well, I sharpened the rocks that I was given, but now I'm waiting for more rocks." So Gluk moves up the assembly line and checks on the rock breaker, Gluk. And Gluk has this big mound of rocks in front of him. He's working as hard as he can, but it takes time to break the rocks into small enough pieces. So as the day goes on, the pile of work for Gluk keeps getting bigger. And Glak doesn't have anything to do because he can sharpen a rock faster than Gluk can break a rock. So the whole process of making spears is moving only at the speed of Gluk. As fast as Gluk can break those rocks, that's as fast as they can make the spear. Well, if you had this problem, a bottleneck in your assembly line, how would you solve the problem? Well, you may be thinking, I can add more employees to the rock breaking process. That way I can make it go twice or 3 times as fast. And this is exactly what Gluk does. Gluk needs at least 2 employees to cut down trees. They each can cut down about 5 trees a day, and so together they can do 10 trees. Gluk can transport those 10 trees a day. Gluk can strip 10 trees a day. Gluk can quarry 10 rocks a day. Gluk can only do 3.5 rocks a day. So he gets 3 Gluks to do that job, which means 10 rocks a day. Glak can sharpen 10 a day. And of course, Brian can assemble 10 spears a day. So at the end of one day, he has 10 spears being made for 10 employees. And he's going to pay all of those employees a guaranteed 2 rabbits per day, which is a crazy amount, right? Before, they were getting 1 rabbit every other day for hunting. Then when they had a spear themselves, they could catch a rabbit every day. But now they're getting paid 2 rabbits per day of work they do. They are overjoyed with this deal. Not only that, but Gluk can sell the rabbits cheaper because at 10 spears a day, sell the spears rather. At 10 spears a day, if he sells them for 2.5 rabbits per spear, he is making 25 rabbits every day. Well, he can pay 20 to his 10 employees and still keep 5 rabbits for himself every single day. Without him doing any work, he is now earning 5 rabbits a day, and his employees are earning 2 rabbits a day. Now, some of you may be thinking, that's not fair. Gluk isn't doing any work. They're working all day long, and he's making far more rabbits than they are. But remember that it was Gluk who took the risk. It was Gluk who decided to invest in the first spear. And not only that, what happens if Gluk doesn't sell any spears? He still owes his employees 2 rabbits a day, and that comes out of his own pocket. So he is the one taking on all the risk for the business. They have no risk. They show up, they work, they're guaranteed their money. He's not guaranteed a thing until he can sell those rabbits. So by taking on the risk, he earns a greater reward. And the only thing that would limit Gluck would be if he ran out of trees, if he ran out of rocks, or if suddenly they ran out of rabbits. The good news is, trees literally grow on trees. The whole earth is made of rocks, and if you've ever heard anything about rabbits, they are prolific. They breed like rabbits. So he's not going to run out of resources. The last limit that Gluck would have would be if the market ran out. That is, if there were enough people in Rabbit Valley that had spears and didn't need to buy them anymore. That would be the only thing that limited Gluck's ability to sell spears, the amount of people available to sell spears to. And this brings us to the end of our analogy, our metaphor of the Industrial Revolution.